UFC Fight Night Macau, Yan versus Figueiredo is officially in the books, which means that it is time for me to give my post-fight recap and analysis. I will put the time codes down below. This was an absolute masterclass by Petr Yan, right? And I think a lot of us were expecting a very, very good performance coming from Petr Yan tonight, but a clean sweep. I mean, unbelievable performance by Yan. Deiveson Figueiredo had some moments, and we'll discuss this fight a little more in depth as we go here. But just overall, guys, I thought this card was actually really, really good. I know here in the U.S., I'm on the East Coast. This started at 3 a.m. The main card was at, was at 6. This was a very, very good card, and I think that there were a lot of matchups on here. Like, real quick, we'll go through some of the prelims here. I mean, Lerner Kavanaugh, one of the guys that I was really interested in seeing coming into this. I mean, Long got a really nice KO here, but Lerner Kavanaugh, impressive performance. This is a guy that had a lot of hype coming in here off the Contender Series. He's got good boxing, good speed, good hands for the flyweight division. Goes out there, shows out. Very good performance by him. And then this knockout in this fight here by Ximeng. I mean, this was one of the nastiest head kick KOs we've seen in MMA, period, and especially in women's MMA. I mean, it kind of reminded me of the Ronda Rousey, of the Holly Holm KO back in the day, but I mean, that was nasty, and I hope that her opponent is okay getting carted out of there. You never like to see that. That was a scary moment, but that was a devastating KO there. And then Dong-Hoon Choi going in there, nasty KO over Sahada. And then moving on here, let's hop right into the main card, which is where I did a lot of my predictions and breakdowns for this Zhang Mingyang, man. I was telling you guys about this guy coming into this fight with Ozzy Diaz. Ozzy Diaz is a gamer. He's a tough dude. He's got good power in his hands. But Zhang Mingyang's a different breed. I mean, this guy is an absolute problem in the light heavyweight division, and I picked him by first round KO. And this went exactly as I expected. Him to put his foot on the gas, get in the face of Ozzy Diaz very early, and look to land those big power shots. And if you cannot, kind of play the matador role, or you cannot meet fire with fire, you're getting knocked out by Zhang Mingyang. And I think that's 18 wins now. All 18 victories by this guy, I believe, have all came by first round finish. I mean, what more could you want in the division right now? A light heavyweight division that has kind of had the same guys recycled at the top outside of the champ, Alex Poatan Pereira. We're looking, you have Amagman Ankalaev kind of waiting in the wings. We've already seen Jamal Hill, Yuri Prohaska. We've already seen a lot of these guys. And in this division, we now have a guy out of China here in Zhang Mingyang, who is absolutely a devastating force, man. The power, I mean, you see here 19 to 9 in terms of the strikes, and then basically nothing else. I mean, 17 to the 9, one knockdown, obviously, for the finish. This dude's a problem. I would love to see him get a ranked guy next in this division. I know that some people might think that that's a little bit soon, considering he's still, green here in the UFC. Dude's a savage. He's a savage. He's got great power on the feet. He's devastating. The way that he starts fast, gets in the phone booth, and just loves to slug it out. He's a problem for everyone in the weight class. The only way that, as you get into the rankings, things do get a little bit different because you fight guys that have kind of been there, done that, and I would like to see him go past the first round, right? Because when you see someone getting so many quick finishes, what happens when they get into that second round? What happens when they get into the third round? So those questions will always be there, but don't punish a guy like Zhang Mingyang just because he's finishing the fights quickly. This guy is a stud. He's a savage. Love watching him fight. Unbelievable performance. Get him a ranked opponent next. Moving on, we have Volkan Oezdemir and Carlos Ulberg. Now, this was a fight that I honestly thought we were going to see a finish here, but I did go Carlos Ulberg because of the speed. I thought the speed, the footwork, and the jab were going to be the difference in this matchup, and that's kind of what we saw, right? Volkan, he's a guy that I've always had a ton of respect for. I mean, I respect all fighters, but you know what I mean? Like, in terms of this guy in Oezdemir, he's just always underrated. He's always overlooked, and people tend to forget about him. And I brought up in my prediction video, I'm like, this guy, just a few years ago, was fighting Daniel Cormier for the title, and he's had some ups and downs. He's been in there, with Magomed Ankalaev, going to a decision with him. He's had a nice KO over Johnny Walker recently, and he's a dangerous striker. He's got good power in his hands, good boxing, pretty decent wrestling with some good submissions. He had the submission over Guskov. I mean, he's a dangerous fighter, and he goes in there against a young, hungry guy in Carlos Ulberg who has outstanding kickboxing, some of the best striking in the weight class. And I just figured that the footwork, the timing, and the speed of Ulberg was going to be a factor, and it was. And the one thing that really surprised me, actually, Volkan Oezdemir was landing a lot of really good low kicks on Carlos. Carlos was not checking the leg kicks. He was not getting his lead leg out of the way. And I thought that was a great strategy by Oezdemir. Beat up the lead leg, try to make Carlos a stationary target. But again, Ulberg is a tough dude. He's fast. He's hard to kind of track down. And I thought that was a great idea by Volkan to try to beat up the leg, hinder the movement, kind of box him up against the fence. Ultimately, it just wasn't enough because Ulberg was sticking and moving. The jab was on point. He was landing some really good straight right hands down the middle. But you can see here, the total strikes, Volkan Oezdemir was right there with him, 98-96. Oezdemir was landing some really good leg kicks, significant strikes. I mean, this was I actually thought when you were watching this, and you're not kind of necessarily judging like, oh, that guy won this round or that guy won this round. I thought that this was a very, very good back and forth fight. I thought that this was competitive. It was very close. And Carlos Ulberg, that was kind of how I summed it up. Oezdemir, if he could close the gap and let those boxing combinations fly, he could absolutely hurt Carlos Ulberg, put him out of there, maybe, put him on the deck and find his neck for a submission. Or it was going to be Ulberg sticking and moving, maybe landing a shot to where he's able to get him out of there. But it was going to be the footwork and the strategic approach from Carlos Ulberg that was going to get this done. And that's what we saw tonight. And that leads us to, what's next? Well, Carlos Ulberg, he was supposed to fight Jamahal Hill, right? We know about all the different things that were supposed to happen for International Fight Week. That card, was great. And then there were a bunch of different matchups that had to be canceled. And Ulberg, unfortunately, had to back out. But he comes in there against Volkan Oezdemir, probably the hardest fight of his career, I would say. Goes in there, sticks and moves, finds a way to win a unanimous decision here. This is the biggest win of Ulberg's career, no question. And Volkan Oezdemir, he was on a tear. 2-fight win streak, two back-to-back finishes, one by submission, one by KO. This is a big win for Carlos, and I would like to see him get a top 5 opponent next. Now, who is that? I don't know because, Yuri Prohaska's teasing fight news. Maybe that's Jamahal Hill. Maybe that's, I don't know who it would be because the light heavyweight division's kind of a little bit stale at times. But I would love to see Carlos Ulberg versus Khalil Rountree. I know Khalil Rountree, he's coming off of a pretty good performance. Even though he lost to Alex Pereira, he did a lot better than what a lot of people were expecting. Goes out there, lands some good shots on Poatan, gets his name out there, right? Big moment for Rountree to kind of market himself. Him versus Carlos Ulberg, striker versus striker. That is an absolutely outstanding matchup. I could see that headlining a fight night with a crowd, or, maybe the UFC looks to put that on a pay-per-view because they are going to try to push Ulberg, and because Rountree definitely won some fans over with the Pineda performance, I like that matchup. I think it's next. And Volkan Oezdemir, if he could get back on track, I don't think he's too far off from a possible title shot at some point. I know he's, been around for a little while, but great performance by both fighters. This was a good competitive fight. I just figured Carlos Ulberg, the youth, the speed, and the timing was going to be a little bit of an issue. Good win by Carlos Ulberg. Moving on to Bang Bang Wang Cong versus Gabriella Fernandes. Now, this was one of the big shockers, if not the biggest shocker of the night to me, which was the fact that Gabriella won the fight. And I'm going to address this immediately right now. I see a lot of people on social media, fraud check, Wang has been fraud check. This was not a fraud check, guys. Gabriella Fernandes is not a can. She's a good fighter. She has pretty good striking. She has a good overall skill set. And this was a fight that I expected Bang Bang Wang to win. But if she was going to lose this fight, it's not like she lost to, Gabriella Fernandes is not a scrub, dude. She's not a scrub. And to me, this is more of a reality check than a fraud check. A fraud check is, I guess, everyone kind of has their different definitions of a fraud check. She was doing very well. She was landing good shots. She was moving forward. You see the totals here, 48-19 when it came to the total strikes. She was moving forward. She kind of looked a little bit like Alex Pereira in there with a very measured approach. She was landing some good shots. And she goes in there against a good fighter in Gabriella Fernandes, controlling the distance, controlling the range. And then eventually, she just gets caught. She got caught with a head kick and then a nasty left hand down the pipe from Fernandes. And then Fernandes was able to find a submission. And to me, what this was not a fraud check would be if, Wang goes out there, she kind of just gets dominated and it's like everyone was expecting her to win. She was winning the fight. She absolutely was in control of this fight. And then she started kind of showboating, smiling, and kind of playing into a little bit of the theatrics. And then she gets caught with a high kick. Then she tries to bite down and slug it out, gets caught with a nice left hand down the middle. And Gabriella's got good technique. There's no wasted movements with Fernandes. She throws a good left hand down the middle, sits Wang on her ass, and then is able to find a submission. submission. And if you're in there against someone that has good jiu-jitsu skills like Fernandes and you get hurt on the feet, you're going to be in trouble. While you're trying to shake the cobwebs, that submission is going to be found. And this isn't a fraud check to me, guys. This doesn't spell fraud check to me. This spells a reality check. That's what I'm going with here, because as good of a fighter as I think Wang is, she was winning the fight. She looked good. She looked sharp. I think that there were some laps in focus. She was kind of, in China. The crowd is excited to see her fight. She goes out there. She gets a crazy KO in her UFC debut. She wants to be on a main card. The UFC's like trying to fast track her here, and she just slipped up in a big moment. Is this a slip up? Absolutely. This is not. This isn't good by any means, her getting finished. But this isn't the end. She's very good. She's got a very good skill set. She's fun to watch. She was doing very well until she wasn't. Not a fraud check, more of a reality check. I think she bounces back strong. But this is a great performance by Gabriella, because to go out there, get a finish over one of the biggest prospects in the women's flyweight division, someone that is looked at as one of the better strikers in all of women's MMA, has a ton of hype behind him, to go in there, bite down, find a way to get the job done, and especially, to hurt her on the feet, as good a striking as Wang has, and to go out there, hurt her that way and find a submission. Big win by Gabriella Fernandes. She definitely upset the UFC by stopping the hype train that was Bang Bang Wang. So good performance by Gabriella. Disappointing for Wang, but she will be back. This is definitely not the end. Not a fraud check, a reality check. Hopefully she'll learn from it. Moving on. We have Song Kenan versus Muslim Salikhov. And I did pick Wang to win that fight, so I got that one wrong. But this fight here, I got this one right. I said that Muslim Salikhov is going to win by finish. I said, guys, look, Song Kenan is younger, and, Salikhov, everyone's talking about, he's 40 years old, he's 40 years old. Song Kenan's the guy that fights like he's 40. Salikhov still fights like he's, still in his prime. He moves really well, he's very athletic, he's got good movement, and a nasty kick there from Muslim. That was a highlight reel, probably the highlight reel of the night. That and then the head kick on the prelims. This was a great performance by Muslim. He shows that he still got it, and going out there outstriking Song Kenan. I figured that it was going to be the speed of Muslim that was going to be the difference, because the issue that I have with Song Kenan, he kind of fights like he's stuck in the mud. Like he's a guy that over his past few fights, and I really, Ian Gary I know is a very fast guy, but Song looked really, really slow in that fight. And yeah, he landed a good shot on Ian, but if you don't stand in the pocket in front of Song, if you don't give him the opportunity to kind of brawl in the pocket with you, you can coach, and you have the speed and the athleticism, you can stick and move on the outside and keep him at range and pick him apart. It's what we saw Ian Gary do. It's what we've seen other fighters do. And he goes out there against Ricky Glenn, and he wins a fight against Ricky Glenn where Ricky Glenn looked awful, and Song was having a very hard time, picking his shots, was having a hard time getting him out of there. And I'm like, this guy looks aged to me in terms of the fighting style. Muslim still got it going on. He's out there throwing spinning back kicks. He's out there sticking and moving. He looks good on the feet. Goes out there, puts it together, nasty KO victory over Kenan here. And in the first round, this was a spectacular performance by Muslim. And again, 40 years of age, little later on in the career, but the guy doesn't fight like he's old. You know what I mean? I know that his age is 40, but he doesn't fight like it to me. He still fights like he's got some youth on his side, so we'll see what's next for him as he moves forward. But again, Song Kenan, a guy that's, kind of just, he's plotty, he's flat-footed, and if you don't stand in the pocket and brawl with him and you have the athleticism, you can pick this guy apart. I picked Muslim to win by KO. I didn't think it would be a highlight reel KO like that, but great performance by Salikhov. Very impressed there, and again, I just didn't understand the hype behind Song Kenan. A lot of people were picking him to win this fight. I didn't get it. I thought Muslim was a good pick here by finish. Moving on, we have Xiaonan versus Tabatha Ricci. This fight went exactly as I think most of us saw it going. When the moment this fight was announced, I had absolutely no idea why the UFC booked this fight, because Tabatha Ricci, dating Callum Walsh, she's seems to have something that the UFC is looking for in terms of marketability, and so they've protected her. They've given her a lot of matchups that are very favorable. She's had some decisions go her way that probably shouldn't have, and she's in there against Angela Hill, close decisions. She's in there against Tisha Pennington, close decisions, and then they're like, you know what? in China. We're just going to throw you into the deep end against Yan Xiaonan, one of the best strikers in the division, someone who's out there going back and forth in terms of the striking with Zhang Weili. Why don't we just throw you in there, Tabatha? And I'm like, they're just throwing her into the Shark Tank. They basically cut her open and had her bleeding, and they're like, let's throw her in the Shark Tank and see if she can survive. No, you're not going to survive here. Tabatha Ricci basically had no way to win this fight. Yan Xiaonan has good footwork. She has very good striking. She's way faster in terms of the striking. Every time Tabatha loaded up and tried to throw a big shot, which is basically what she does on the feet, she loads up, grunts, and throws a big old winging shot. Yan Xiaonan was countering with 2, 3, 4, punch combinations, and she was landing very, very clean on Tabatha. And I was like, the only way Ricci wins this fight is by pushing her up against the fence, holding her, maybe taking her down, laying on top of her, winning on control time, because people saw a path to victory that way, considering that Carlos Esparza did it. And I'm like, Carlos Esparza is a much better wrestler than Tabatha. A much better wrestler than Tabatha. And that was a couple years ago. Yan has improved, leaps and bounds since then. And, I just thought that this overall was a horrible booking if the UFC was trying to give Tabatha an opportunity here. I just thought Yan Xiaonan was a horrible matchup for her. Yan goes out there, outstrikes her 89-17. I mean, not even close here. And then Tabatha did get the one takedown, didn't do a lot with it. And then 78-15 in terms of the significant strikes. I mean, it was a total one-sided beatdown from Yan Xiaonan in this fight. She looked great. She has good coaches in her corner, with Uriah Faber. They did a very good job just having her stick the jab in her face, because if you go in there against someone that's going to try to grapple heavy the whole time, you just utilize footwork, good movement, and you stick a jab on them nonstop, you bust her face up, you affect the breathing, and you discourage them from taking shots. And we saw that. And Yan Xiaonan, perfect game plan, good movement, kept her at the end of the strikes. Very, very good performance. She calls out Zhang Weili for a rematch. I don't know if the UFC looks to go that route. I know that there's not maybe a ton of other options right now in the division, but I think the UFC might look to go that way, because it was, Zhang Weili, outstanding fighter, one of the best ever. And then Xiaonan, she can push her because Xiaonan's got very good striking. It seems like she has improved in terms of the takedowns. Now, again, Zhang Weili's a different animal, right? She's got a really good skill set. Her grappling is really, really good. But I think that's a good matchup. Every time they do Yan versus Zhang Weili, I think it's going to be a close competitive fight. I would still favor Zhang to win that one. That's a big fight. I thought that if they were going to go back to China, that was a fight that they were going to look to book as a potential headliner. I know that a fight night and a title fight doesn't always work out for the UFC, but great performance by Yan. I don't know why they did this to Tabatha. This was a complete mismatch from the very beginning. Again, it's a fight. Anything could happen. I didn't understand the booking. I thought it was a bit rough. Moving on to the main event of the evening, Petr Yan versus Deiveson Figueiredo. This was an absolute masterclass by Petr Yan, and this is kind of what I was expecting. I was expecting a Petr Yan unanimous decision win over the course of 5 rounds. Guys, listen. Petr Yan, in terms of the striking, is one of the best strikers in UFC history. Not just in the bantamweight division and not just in this division, that division, of all time and in the UFC. This guy is so creative. The way he was switching stances, he kept landing that good uppercut out of both stances whenever they get into the phone booth. He was landing some good, nasty uppercuts, good straight shots. And I mean, you can see here, outstruck Deiveson 190-53. Yan even got a takedown of his own. Figgy came out early on, good takedown, put Yan on his back. Yan was able to reverse the position, get on top, land some good ground and pound. And a lot of people were like, oh, I gave Figgy the round. I actually thought Yan won that round. I thought that, Figgy, started off great, and then Yan was able to reverse the position, land some good shots. I mean, you see here, 121-53 significant strikes. This was an absolute masterclass by performance by Petr Yan. This was, not only was it a big performance, but he goes out there against Song Kenan, gets back in the win column after a rough patch of fights for Yan, some close decisions that maybe could have went his way. The illegal knee with Aljamain Sterling, getting 50-45 by Merab. This guy has a will that is undeniable. And whenever you watch Yan, like I've said before, everyone is a fan of Petr Yan, it seems. And this guy has such a fun style to watch when he is able to keep the fight on the feet. And even when he's in the grappling, creating scrambles, working his way back up to his feet. I mean, Deiveson Figueiredo, This is one of the greatest flyweights of all time. This is a guy that has won 3 fights in a row since he's came up to bantamweight. Beats up on Rob Font, goes out there, subs Cody Garbrandt, goes out there, the first person to knock down Marlon Vera, coming in with a lot of hype here, possible title opportunity on the line. This was a motivated Figueiredo. At 36 years of age, it's now or never, goes in there. Petr Yan just had the answer for everything. The way that he was able to get up from the takedowns, the way that he was able to reverse the position, win the clinch battles. He was landing some very good knees in close. And the boxing of Yan, it's always the X factor. But in this fight, he had some nasty trips and sweeps. It was the kicks, the way he was attacking the lead legs of Figgy, the way he was mixing the kicks up to the body, keeping them guessing, firing off good boxing combinations, followed up by the kicks. Yan is just a special fighter. He's one of my favorite fighters of all time to watch. He's just so technical. He's so clean to watch. And this was a masterclass of a performance. He dominated this fight, and he did get dropped. Figgy landed a very good straight right hand, which is what I was concerned about, was considering that laser beam right hand that he throws. We saw him land it on Vera. We saw him hurt Rob Font with it. I figured that was going to be a weapon. I was also worried about the submissions. Yan had the answers. Despite getting dropped, he got right back up, got back in Figgy's face, hurt Figgy a few times. That uppercut really was the money shot all night long. Huge win by Petr. And what's next? The bantamweight division's interesting because you have Merab Dvalishvili, who's the champion. Do they do the O'Malley versus Merab rematch? I think there's a possibility they go that route. But to me, I think Umar Nurmagomedov is a guy that should get the next title shot. I know that people feel differently when it comes to who deserves a title shot. I would love to see Merab versus Umar, and I would love to see Petr Yan versus Sean O'Malley in a 5-round fight. I would love to see a rematch because it was a very close 3-rounder over in Abu Dhabi. That was that was a controversial decision. Some people thought Yan won. I thought it was very, very close. I could have seen how you could have given it to either guy. I'd love to see a striker's delight 5-rounder between Yan and Sean O'Malley. I think that is just a fan favorite fight. It's a big fight because, again, it's going to be very fun to watch considering the first fight was very close. And then whoever wins, you give them a title shot. And I think that also people are going to say, well, maybe you do Umar versus Yan. Maybe they do that. That's also a very fun fight to watch. I think that Umar should be fighting for the title. That's just kind of why I think that there. But I don't know that this was enough for Yan to get a title shot, right? I know that it was a masterclass, and considering we have Umar in the wings, the possible rematch with O'Malley, I don't know that they look to book a title fight with Merab versus Yan, considering how the first meeting went. I know Yan wants to rematch with Merab. I just don't know if they look to go that route, considering it was a 50-45 decision the first time around. But either way, lots of fun matchups for Petr Yan. Me personally, I would love to see him versus O'Malley. I would love to see a rematch. I would love for it to be 5 rounds. It would be a striker's delight. What a treat that would be, right? Put the rankings aside. Put who deserves a title shot aside. Who would make an entertaining fight in the bantamweight division right now? In terms of putting all that aside, what would be fun to watch? Yan versus O'Malley in a back-and-forth kickboxing fight to where maybe we even see Yan grapple a little bit. We saw that in the first fight between the two. That is an outstanding fight. Winner gets a title shot off of that. Then you do Umar versus Merab, and then the winner would fight Yan versus O'Malley. I think that's the way the UFC may lean. Again, I don't know. There's a lot that you could do in terms of the matchmaking here. Big, big, big performance by Petr Yan. Absolute masterclass over Deiveson Figueiredo. And what's next for Figgy? I could see him possibly taking on someone like Corey Sandhagen. I could see him, fighting Song Yadong if Umar and Song don't fight. There's some different options out there. So what a time to be alive, man. Petr Yan winning. I feel good. I love when the guy's in the win column because he's one of the most entertaining guys in the sport to watch and just a fun dude overall. Big win by Petr Yan. I don't know if he gets a title shot next. He's definitely getting a fun fight next. So I want to hear from you all down in the comments. Like this video. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification bell so you do not miss an upload. I would appreciate it. See you next time.